Ahmed Shaki and Sharon Smith's books got completely kicked, like they disappeared from the Haymarket website. I think there's a lot of good books on Haymarket. They don't just publish ISO authors either.
Right.
No. I mean, it's always been just leftist like material. It's the best place to find just random leftist material, in general.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's either Haymarket, Verso, or there's a few others.
PM
AK,
Press, AK.
PM.
Those are the bomb ones, right?
yeah, but there's not a whole lot, So I mean, it's great that it's around.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've always appreciated the books coming out of it. I hope that that's not destroyed or anything. Like, what is it? What's going on in that? Do you guys know anything about Haymarket?
I know almost more than a lot of the members because I'm in an ex-ISO group on Facebook, and like the fucking information is spreading so fast there.
Yeah.
I'm like knowing more than a lot of the members at times. But anyways,
I too am ex-ISO, but I'm not on Facebook.
Yep. Welcome to the Lil Guillotine podcast. I'm your host, Lil
Yeah, I
Guillotine.
might wanna do that, yeah.
I'm here with Brock Barber and Brad LeBaron.
What's going on?
Hello.
Yeah, so the fucking what's going on with Haymarket Books that publishes a lot of good books by many different authors. Fucking like Aaron Darty Roy's published on there. Fucking Amy Goodman and like all types of fucking good shit. They even sell anarchist books. Like I bought at Haymarket shop. I bought Our Enemies in Blue there, and it was a really really great read. But fucking Haymarket Books is controlled by CERSC, which is an acronym that stands for the Center for Economic Research and Social Change. So that's it.
Yeah.
CERSC and CERSC.
So many acronyms.
So
too.
the ISO, the International Socialist Organization, if folks don't know, there's sort of like a crisis, and it's public, so you can talk about it now, which is different for ISO because usually stuff is not public, and I appreciate that it's public now because it makes everything a lot better and a lot more therapeutic. But basically, fucking they're CERSC. So they have the National Committee and the Steering Committee that is like kind of the leaders in the ISO, and then they also have this CERSC board, and there's a number of ISO members that are on it, and CERSC controls Haymarket Books and a number of other like organizations, and they had revenue of $4 million in 2017. Their last year's shit hasn't come out yet because it's not tax time, but so basically it's like a powerhouse. And Ahmed Shaki and Sharon Smith were two members that were ousted from the ISO, rightfully so, because of sort of like their like brutal authoritarianism, and they're also happen to be members on the board of CERSC, and so it appears that Sharon Smith is sort of like gunning on the ISO and sort of like turning against the ISO right now. So that could end really badly with Haymarket maybe disappearing, possibly.
God.
It's really up for grabs what's going to happen.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Okay. All right. So it's up to us. It's up to all the rest of us.
No. I mean, it's up for the folks in the.
No, I know, but I mean,
it's yet to see.
I mean, keeping like, sorry, I mean, I'm talking generally. Like, I mean, like keeping leftist literature like afloat and like, strong, like it's been with Haymarket. You know what I mean? Because like they, it's probably been hard enough just to keep it going, being some of that stuff that some people don't want to publish.
Right.
But yeah, it's I don't know a whole lot about the situation myself because I've kind of been a little out of the loop. But yeah, it's. I just want to say, I mean, as far as like my local like branch and like my experience in the last several years doing different organizing with them. Like they've, been, excellent organizers as, individuals, and, I've learned a lot from them and, been inspired by a lot of people in them. So, I mean, just, I guess just a, small shout out to like local ISO members, like, keep your chin up, you're still revolutionaries. We'll get through this shit.
Hell yeah.
But you were saying though about Sharon and CERSC.
Yeah, just that it might end badly. I was done. I was gonna add.
Okay, I was wondering if there's any more information on that front.
Oh, yeah, there's lots more to do with the whole fucking situation because basically there was like a sexual assault, a rape that happened, and it was, I don't know if they're fucking public with the city it's in yet. I think that's been kept secret or not been, for confidentiality reasons. But we're in that city right now, and I know everybody that was involved.
Yeah,
and we were kept secret. And turns out Like another thing that's really been fucking with me is that I was on like the leadership position in ISO in 2009 here.
Yeah, that's
And-
right. You were there back in the day.
Yeah, I was a branch committee, and according to these new documents that surfaced about this rape that happened, Joe R. Was the assailant, which is also someone that used to stay at my house for free when they were in Madison during 2011. What surfaced was that there was a rape that they covered up that was prior to 2013, which is when the Joe R. one happened, which was also here.
Yeah.
Here as well. And so it's possible that I was on the leadership position when like the national people came and covered this other rape up in our branch, and that really fucking irks me and makes me feel like I've been violated and lied to and betrayed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like nobody, that's like an additional issue that's been irking me personally because. Yeah, and like I think folks here in this town that it happened in have been affected more than most of the, but like the whole fucking
absolutely. I mean, it's cool because like I said, I mean, they've been in the dark about this and doing the best organizing that they can with what time they have. Organizing's it's freaking hard to do sometimes, and you put a lot into it, and like it's when you put that much of your life into something. You get very close to it. So like, I'm sure a lot of them are really, struggling with their, political identity and like just, what, rethinking, I guess, what leaders that they had, you know what I mean? Like that's a tough thing to grapple with, so yeah, it could take a minute, but yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna. That was one of the things I want to talk to you about, folks. Was like the different political tendencies because I think it's relevant now.
Yeah.
After this, because like this fucking ISO might not exist after like conference. I think conference. They have a conference that I actually liked a lot because you ever been there?
Yeah, I went. Twice.
Okay, yeah, right. It's fucking good, right?
Yeah, socialism is great.
Yeah,
great. I don't know. Escape.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the
nice
few experiences where you're surrounded by a bunch of other, socialists and communists and anarchists.
Yeah,
it's good shit.
It's like a political vacation.
Y'all should go this year. It might be really fucking awkward though.
It's.
all this.
I would think that's unavoidable.
I'm actually going to.
Yeah.
I'll be in like Germany when it's happening. Actually,
Really?
I didn't tell you that. Brock was telling me how he's going to be in Germany, and actually, you said was there one in West Germany that you were a city?
Trier.
Oh, Trier. Okay, yep. We're staying in. Fuck, we're either flying out of Bonn or Cologne, one of the two, back to United States and staying there for like a week. Oh, and I have this fucking. Oh, Enough is Enough. 14.
No, I don't.
So do you know it's going down?
Yeah.
So they're kind of like it's going down, but they're out of Europe and they're specifically Wuppertal,
Okay.
which is in that area, North Rhine-Westphalia.
Yeah.
And fucking, I have Comrades of Comrades who know them, and they just opened up a cafe, like an info cafe in Wuppertal, and fucking, I reached out to them through my friend, and like I got a show lined up. I'm doing a free show at their
Nice.
cafe. Enough is
Nice.
enough. So yeah, that's really cool because like a space like this hasn't really existed. Like even in Europe, because usually it's just squatted,
Mm-hmm.
But they've been having trouble with the authorities, so they did it legit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So wait. So is this like a venue that was a squatting venue, and then they had to legitimize that kind of thing?
Well, yeah, basically it wasn't at the same place, but this group had squats. Just it's like kind of a big tradition in Europe. Like anarchists have so many like squat centers, and they're like legit. They look like real businesses, and the fucking
Okay, wait. What's a squat center?
Yeah, man. There's like all these anarchist centers in Europe, all around Europe, like where they're like squats, but they're like community centers.
Wow. Okay.
And they're straight up provide. They're like a straight legit community center.
Okay.
That you would find here.
So when I hear squat though, I think about like
illegal.
Well, squatting rights. The the idea that like if a place is abandoned for long enough and you occupy it for long enough, you get like actual certain legitimate rights to the property. Right. That's a thing.
You know anything about that?
I don't know.
I only know about it from talking to people that lived in co-ops that this was a thing that happened with, like someone They apparently got control of the co-op
In Madison?
via squatting rights
Oh,
or whatever.
Yeah, I think we it's something different in Wisconsin, but yeah, I know what
Yeah,
you're saying.
yeah.
It's
So
not
I was-
squatting,
yeah.
but
So I mean,
property, something.
Yeah. It's always been fascinating, just as an idea to me.
I have
Yeah.
explored that as an organizing thing in the past and asked people about it, like legal folks, and it's
Well, and I
different in
know
every
that-
state.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, like, there's definitely, like, you know, like small punk rock rings in Madison that do shit like that. You know, play shows random weird places that they don't talk about. You know, so I mean, but it's not like for political reasons generally. It's just for fucking rocking out.
I would think that around here, or at least in the United States, the police are more likely to kick you out than maybe in Europe. They have more legal right to squat than we do.
Yeah,
It'd be hard to maintain that with the cops bearing down on you.
yeah.
Yeah, you really gotta hide. Yeah.
Oh, and then that reminds me of like squats I heard about in Greece, where it was straight up like the only place for refugees. I forget from Syrian refugees. You know, they're like straight up a fucking place where they housed refugees who didn't have anywhere else to go. Shit's dope.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely squatted some places here and there, probably.
Yeah,
Here in Madison.
But you're talking about
Maybe.
what were we originally talking about, the squatters in Europe doing.
Squatters'
Oh yeah, you're
rights.
playing the show. Yeah, that's right. You're playing
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Free show, and then these folks are like, "Oh yeah, this is so cool, and we'll help you get real shows too, where you get paid."
That's cool.
Nice.
Because it's like a value
nice.
proposition, you know. I'm giving them something dope.
Right.
I'd just be honored just to
Hey,
do
yeah.
a free show
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like, you know, ask for donations or sell merch.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah. No, I mean it can be hard to put together, you know, a couple of string together some shows and actually like make your gas money back. So it's nice when they're willing to work with you and try to help you meet that goal.
yeah.
You know.
So what?
'Cause that's all you really need when you're on the road. You need at least gas money, you know? Like
yeah.
Especially
Plain
when you're
money.
your
Yeah.
jet
it's
fuel
like, hey, I'll
money.
give you $50 to do this, but it's like, well, but it's going to take me like $70 to get there.
Yeah.
This isn't going to work out.
Yeah, I got paid $25 for a show the other night.
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
so much work, but that's kind
Yeah.
of fine. It was nobody was making money.
Well, that's the thing. As a musician, you shouldn't expect to make money for like X amount of years. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
it's cool to
you're
just make-
going to be kind of broke for a while.
It's cool to make more than $0, so it was kind of cool. Oh, $25. Wow, I'm in the black tonight.
Exactly.
Holy
Be
shit!
happy when you make just a teeny bit. You
But
know.
well, I was gonna ask you, like, what are you doing, or maybe we should, because you're going soon. Like, maybe you should. Are you gonna be by Wuppertal, or what do you? Are you
might
have any
be.
political things planned?
I don't know how much I can say it. I know some countries
Yeah,
have
don't
laws about this.
Oh,
stuff.
right,
I know.
right. Good point.
While I'm in Luxembourg, I'm going to like a peace, like a I forget what it's called, but it's like an anti-war pro peace sort of get together or march. I'm not exactly sure.
Oh, that's dope.
That someone I'm going to go see in Europe is involved with.
Oh,
But
nice.
it would be. I should find. I know there's some IWW members over there, and it'd be cool to see some info shops in Europe. We don't tend to have those. I mean, maybe in like New York and Chicago and Portland and cities like that, they have info shops, and we have one here. But you know, some are a lot more radical than others.
Yeah, it's just a place
Yeah.
to get zines here.
Yeah.
and nothing wrong with that. That's dope.
Yeah.
Better than not having that.
Yeah, I mean, we have a really good like DIY community, you know, in Madison,
Yeah,
but it's not necessarily always focused on like real radical stuff. You know, sometimes it's just run of the mill, you know, stories.
yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. You know, I like the you know kind of creativity that we have in Madison.
So yeah, some info shops, have like all kind of like spaces to do, like there's lots of fucking bike collectives and shit, and like fucking like they'll have tool loan programs and food shares and all types of shit like that. And it's really kind of like an anarchist way, traditionally anyways, of like organizing, I think. And I was gonna ask you, Brock, because you have identified in the past as an anarcho-Maoist.
No, I still do.
Yeah, I was wondering
Okay.
if you still do. Yep. Yeah, and I think that's dope.
Yeah.
But like, and like Brad hasn't really been exposed to much anarchist organizing, I guess, or not as much as
Well,
like
yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah, not-
mostly
with us
just
and shit,
Yeah, I
too,
was gonna
yeah.
say mostly
I shouldn't say that.
auxiliary like friends of GDC members. And stuff.
But like just because anarchists are all about the squats and the info shops and shit.
Well, I know
So is that-
I know a lot of punk rockers that would
And-
call themselves anarchists.
Yep, and they do those info shops and shit a lot
Yeah.
too, right? Yep.
Yeah.
ZIY zines.
Uh-huh.
But what about fucking Anarcho-Maoism? Is that into info shop shit, or are you the only one?
There's some people. I mean, I don't know
Alright.
how serious we are. There's like not a coherent ideology.
Yeah. There's no.
But I
Hence
know,
the
like,
anarcho part of it, right?
true. I suppose I'm
Kinda,
being very true to my beliefs.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like more traditional Maoism, there is like that same. I mean, it's not info shops necessarily, but like after school programs and like free food programs and things like that.
Yeah.
are like serve the people, as they say, which kind of go in line with some things anarchists do.
Yeah. That reminds me of Black Panthers ML stuff
Right.
with the more community. So like I also was in the ISL for many years, and so like I think for good or bad, I think it's bad, but they tend to paint anarchism in general as something really bad and ineffective.
Yeah.
And so then like once I moved outside of like the ISO and sort of saw, no, actually there's just as many academic intellectuals in the anarchist spaces as there are communist spaces. It's not like any less academically rigorous or fucking theoretically like fucking fallacious or non-cogent or anything like that.
Well, I think the left in general sometimes is difficult with just anarchists, just because they want everyone to play together and play ball and always be on the same page and stuff, but that's just not how everyone is.
Right. Yeah.
People are different, I guess. I don't know. My thoughts.
I remember when I was in Socialist Alternative reading, we had to reading the newspaper, and it was like, during the 2011 stuff here.
Yeah. I was heavily involved.
There was this article I read about why, like, it outlaid like what the ISO was proposing and what the IWW was proposing and what Socialist Alternative was proposing, and they're all almost the exact same thing. And it was going into why ISO and IWW are totally wrong,
Right.
and misleading people, and why the Social Alternative is correct.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that turned me off.
Yeah,
that
I was going to
organization.
say that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've definitely like ISO members wouldn't like straight up like say bad things about SA members or anything. Like they were respectful, but like it wasn't like they try to be respectful, but like if you mentioned stuff about the SA stuff, you could kind of see certain members be like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and like, but to their credit, they didn't like, rail against them. It's just like, it was obvious that there was like, I don't know, beef that shouldn't be there all the time, I guess. That was my, I guess, like little criticism about that, is that, there are certain times where it's like, okay, yeah, it's, we do have certain differences. That's important to point out. But like, there's sometimes where it's like, dude, we're all fighting for the same thing. Let's get in the same room and do it.
Stuff.
So yeah, like it's there's at that point when what you were talking about, like at that point when they were all talking about doing like the same things, that's the point when they should then get in the room,
Right.
and then talk about how to make that united goal.
United Front.
United Front.
Were you gonna say something?
Well, just it makes you wonder like what the actual disagreements are sometimes. When there is that singular like a moment that was in 2011 where there could have been something done, or there was a lot of at least wider general like anger or willingness to do something that these three organizations in town couldn't come together and like push a collective thing together, especially with how small the left was.
Yeah.
It probably still is in this town.
And it was smaller back then, for
Yeah.
sure. SA was like a twig or whatever, not even a branch. In
Yeah, as I
2011.
say, I think it's grown a little bit in the past couple of years. that
Yeah,
I've
they
seen.
sort of
Yeah.
cemented here in 2011 as part of the.
Yeah, I think
Phil
that
had came, the national person, and was like organizing with high school folks pretty effectively. And,
well, and that was during the Arab Springs and all that, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that was all happening at the same
And
time.
Occupy, all that stuff.
Occupy, yeah. So I always kind of looked at that particular moment as a almost, I don't know. I don't want to say training wheels moment, but like it's a kind of it was a moment that like awakened a lot of people to a lot of issues, but like, you know, a lot of people that didn't quite know how to organize around those issues yet.
Probably all three of those orgs experienced that.
Yeah, I wasn't there for that. So
Okay.
Yeah, I've only heard stories too. So I mean,
Yeah, I was the only one.
I was in college and I was like, you know, I did a report on some stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I wasn't involved in, you know, organizations at that point.
Unfortunately, I'm going to digress though and be like,
digress.
I could expand on that, but that's like huge topic. So I want to talk about the in addition to like anarchism sort of being painted negatively, you know, over and over again, to the point where I was surprised to like hear an anarchist who had cogent theories and shit like that. Also, like Maoism and Stalinism, I think, were also equally denigrated and now being way more non-sectarian, after having left the ISO. I've worked with people who identify as Stalinist and Maoist. Obviously, there's one here I'm doing a podcast with.
Yeah.
But I've had like great experiences with them, and like then it's just like, yeah, that all just seemed like sectarian posturing and shit.
Yeah.
What I was taught.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, I mean, from what I don't know, I've met people from a lot of different groups, I guess, at this point, and like, I don't know, they're all mostly trying to do the same thing,
You know?
similar stuff.
Fucking A.
You know, and I don't know. I think that sometimes we do get kind of caught up in the weeds with the titles and the I don't know, the connotations that we have with certain words. It's like you know, socialist, you know, is like, you know, one of the prime examples. Like pretty much before Bernie, it was like a really fucking dirty word to be called socialist as a politician. You know,
Now it's like kind of like liberal almost, right?
Yeah,
Or-
well,
yeah, and like exactly, yeah. But they like now, like the right still uses it like that.
True.
You know, they still treat it like it's the boogeyman. But like, you know, I don't know, like it's not as dirty of a word on the left as it used to be, at least.
it's true. Like there are people like my parents call themselves like democratic socialists now, and
cool.
I mean, what? Yeah,
They got to add that democratic on
Yeah.
there to make them feel safe. But
It's true. It's true. Well, and the fact that most people don't really 100% really understand what it means yet for a lot.
yeah,
you
there's
know.
I think that there's a you know, definite lack of information, I guess, about political history and ideology, and you know, an unbiased, I guess, view of different political movements that took place. I mean, yes, we all know that, you know, Nazis suck and Hitler's like the worst, but you know, that's mostly what we focus on is you know, I guess a lot of that World War II glory stuff, you know. But yeah, we don't do a great job at teaching like the world's history to our kids, I don't think.
No, and then if you're
We don't
watching,
focus on it.
if you're watching like CNN or NBC or the major news networks, I mean, what you get from them, socialism is just the Green New Deal and Medicare for all. That's what it means.
yeah, right.
And so
Yeah.
it makes sense that a lot of people see it that way because that's all
Yeah.
they're getting.
Yeah. You have to kind of, you know, go out of your way and look it up yourself to really figure stuff out.
Yeah, I used to despise, like, first getting out of like Trotskyism and opening my mind into other things. Not that I'm anti-Trotskyite or nothing like that, but fucking looking at anarchists' thought.
I personally, like, I'm at a point where I'm not sure where I fall as far as the categories go. You know, I know, I guess I'm a socialist, but you know, for me, it's more about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it.
So first time I learned that an anarchist was traditionally called a libertarian socialist, I was like, no way I'm calling myself a libertarian. But it turns out like it goes the opposite way, that the fucking libertarians like appropriated that term. So now like, and it might be kind of like, it's either I don't know, deceptive, or it's a way of appealing to the masses. I like to identify myself as an anarchist communist and a socialist too, like a libertarian socialist. It has to do with me being a rapper too, and like not just good for business, but good for revolution too, because I am honestly a rapper to build the revolution. But fucking yeah, that's and I'm not any of those things. I'll identify as all of them, and then like I find like people, it appeals to more people when you do that.
Yeah, definitely, and I always want to, I guess, with my Revolover audio stuff, not fight for any particular group. I want to just help the left in general with some of that stuff, and give people from different groups those voices.
There really isn't as big a divide between what is a communist, socialist, and anarchist, depending on where you fall within those camps. Like you can be all three. I mean, obviously, socialist and communist, there really isn't, by the definition, a difference, right? If you are a socialist, if you call yourself a socialist, you might not be a communist, but generally, like, the only reason those two words exist is to kind of separate more social democrats from what became sort of the revolutionary socialism with, when you get it close to the revolution in Russia in 1917 is when you really get a big divide between more capitalistic people, pro-capitalist people like Bernstein or and then we had the same thing in the Socialist Party of the United States, or Socialist Party of America back then, is, you literally had people who were elected to be delegates at the National Convention of the SPA that were barred and not allowed to participate because of their support of the Russian Revolution. And in the Socialist Party, the people who were more right-wing in the Socialist Party called the cops on them when they showed up at the convention and demand to participate. Right. So you have that across like all the socialist parties, this break between more nationalistic support of World War II or World War I and rejection of the Russian Revolution, and the more revolutionary anarchist, socialist, and communist who all. I mean, even
there's a lot of flavors of it.
Even in 1917, a lot of anarchists supported the Russian Revolution, at least at that time, because you have this first working class conquest of power. And of course, why would you, and anarchists were involved in the Bolshevik, and not even the Bolshevik, we have the social revolutionaries and other groups that were a part of that revolution that kind of get forgotten now in hindsight.
Yeah.
Bolshevik.
Yeah, I was going to say, a lot of times when you hear about anarchists, you hear about anarchists assassinating different political figures. You know what I mean? Like when I'm looking at like general history or whatever, it's
got assassinated by
it's like, and then some anarchists came up and assassinated this guy, and then war started and stuff. But that's usually like in history books or whatever. That's mostly what you hear.
That's sort of the trope they used to destroy the anarchist movement, which was very powerful in like the late 19th century, right?
Yeah,
it was like huge. Oh, so I was about the difference between the word socialist and communist too, because I remember this reading Socialism, Scientific or Utopian, which is I think it's just Engels,
Frederick
or it might
Engels,
be just Engels, not both of them, right? Yeah, and then he talks about, because the term socialism was the only word at first, and there was no word for anarchist and there was no word for communist either, and so they were having debates over what this socialism was, and it meant all of them shits at first, and then of course the developments of the World War I, changed the definition and everything.
Yeah. Then after all of history unraveled or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Then still like communism, still has that edge to mainstream media. Socialism has got past it, but like if you call yourself a communist, still liberals are gonna give you a weird look. You know what I mean?
That's why it's
because language is a weird thing, and like especially the way that we use it in our society right now. It's just because like terms so quickly like change meaning or something because of memes and how fast we process stuff. So like I think that's gone to the benefit, I guess, of the term socialism, because within. So, like not that long of a time period, like we've gone from villainizing it to completely accepting those kinds of ideas for to put forward for, Bernie's talking about, free healthcare and stuff, and trying to, that's in the narrative now, is actually talking about those things more often,
Yeah.
It's kind of why but that's kind of where like the word communism still has use, is that there is this idea that people have of socialism that is, completely like, at least what I view socialism as being, social ownership of like property and social control of our society. And for people who are like very strictly thinking of like more of a welfare state, welfare capitalism, if you say communist, that at least like wakes them up, because you can say I'm a socialist to somebody, and they think you just want like food stamps and like nationalized healthcare, which is something that outside the United States isn't even radical, and it definitely isn't it's very much still a part of like liberal ideology.
Like wanting Social Security to continue is like considered socialist maybe nowadays compared to a few years ago.
But I think that like we're still like behind on that stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We've like, because that's part of our thing, is we are so proud of being ignorant in America or the United States. Speaking of ignorance. But like, we're so proud, like when we believe in something, we're like, I believe this and I don't give a shit what anyone else thinks. You know what I mean? Like, so it's taken a lot longer for us to process, like, but it sucks though, because like there did used to be movements that fought for these things and won certain things, and we've gone a little backwards on those some things, but I mean, we're relearning though how to do that in America, how to think about our future and safety nets, and helping out everyone in society.
Otherwise, pitchforks and we'll have them. So we have to, or they have to.
Yeah. Well, my only fear with some of the like more like Bernie style socialism is like it. I mean, that is fine. Like, obviously, I'm not against someone. Or like, I'm not against us while we're in this society having some basic protections, but I hope that people who through like Bernie or through like more liberal like socialists, quote unquote socialists, will not see that as being like the end goal. Like, okay, we can get this and have some sort of something now, but there is something that we need. We actually need to change society. We can't like live in capitalism forever because of all these things with the environment collapsing and it just not being sustainable. And so, but it does seem like people are getting that way, because there's a lot of people who were like just like Bernie sort of people in 2016 or over time have looked into socialism, have gone like from being like that like we want universal healthcare to being like hardcore communists and anarchists who are like
fuck ICE.
It's
like pretty prevalent.
Stalin did nothing wrong, and you're like, whoa, like,
I know,
that's a big jump.
That's the kind of Stalinism I'm not into.
But. So I'm just saying, like that's like how quickly like people's ideology's been changing in this country.
I shouldn't say that, because I think all Stalinism is like that. But anyways, I appreciate Stalinist comrades.
Well, I'm not saying Stalin didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
Well, there's definitely, especially as Maoists have a lot of critiques of the Soviet Union.
Tell me about that. I want to know about that shit.
I didn't prepare for that.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right.
But there's like when you're reading through, especially like some of Mao's actual writings in like the 50s is like this realization of like issues with the bureaucracy, like the sort of the Soviet system. There's a whole huge like thing Mao wrote, which is like a critique of Stalin and the Soviet system. I forget the economic system, but seeing like how quickly like bureaucracies can be corrupted, and there's a really good book called The Unknown Cultural Revolution that kind of goes through that, and it's been a while since I've read it, but how like the local during the Chinese Revolution, the local bureaucrats kind of just took over the role of like the local warlords in the party.
Is 1914?
1949 is
49.
when
I was way off.
they actually, I mean, so the party, so like
I remember there was another one at 14, I think, right? A different, like, the first one or
1914.
something?
There was like the liberal revolution
Okay, yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
overthrew the.
Okay, yeah.
I think that was either 1911 or 1940.
Okay.
It's somewhere.
Okay.
It's been a while since I read that
All right.
history.
Yeah, and then in 49.
49 is when the nationalists were kicked out of China and so like, but the shit, I'm not prepared to talk about that.
Well, I edit it, so if you don't sound sharp, you'll
right.
sound really cool. You'll sound super knowledgeable on the podcast.
You'll just like
You'll be
edit
"Whoa."
out
Yeah,
all
we're
the
just
pauses
gonna-
and everything. No, I do. Yep, I do a really good job.
We're just gonna edit in some solid quotes.
I'll put Noam Chomsky voiceover.
Yeah.
No, just
There we go.
you'll edit out every word, so I'm just like the Chinese Revolution.
Can I talk for a second about how much
Go
I
ahead.
like Noam Chomsky's speaking pattern? Regardless
but
of
then
the
bring it back-
politics,
bring it back to
I don't
China
care about
after
his
that,
politics
be like,
specifically. Just his speaking pattern is just so hilarious to me. For some reason, I don't know. He's just so like he's got so many doomy and gloomy things that he says in such a matter of fact way.
Yes, he does.
You know,
It's
like
true.
so the our children aren't gonna have any. They're not gonna have playgrounds out there to play on because they can't go outside because the Earth's just gonna be a
he never
wasteland.
gets fucking.
Yeah, no,
never
he
gets
just says he just stays right in the middle.
Yep.
Just like he's I don't know. It's there's something about that I always found interesting.
I like Brock's voice too. Can I hear some more
come on
about
now.
China?
Oh, so I was gonna say, there's who was a good counterpoint to Noam Chomsky is like Michael Parenti. I don't know if you've heard any of Michael Parenti's talk.
Yeah,
For
for
sure.
sure.
Yep. Christian as well.
Who's that?
Christian Parenti, his son,
Oh, I haven't heard anything.
who's
from-
also done
from them.
some good shit.
Okay, but like it's like they're from like the same generation, but they have very different like ways of presenting information and views. It's kind of interesting to listen to both. I'm
Yeah,
more of
yeah.
a fan of Michael Parenti, but that's
Yeah.
neither here nor there.
Yep.
What the hell is I talking about? China?
Oh, I don't know, like fucking, because anything's news to me. So
China.
whatever you say about China and Maoism is like interesting as fuck to me. So, 1949, like there was bureaucrats that took over the revolution or something.
So, like, I mean, from the start, so you get China kind of followed Russia's example, and I mean that's a whole podcast into itself.
Right.
But there was like several anti-corruption or like bureaucrat campaigns that kind of failed from like top down, like trying to get people because like. There's these things that like bureaucrats stayed in power even though like the local people had like legal rights to like vote them out, but they never did. I don't know if I'm ready to talk about this. Let's skip that.
Don't say anything
Well,
more. Your sound.
I had like one
That was
just
good.
I guess fly on the wall kind of question. So what exactly is I guess China of now? What is the what do they
Maoist
call
position on that?
themselves as far as like their government format?
Oh, the People's Republic of China.
Yeah.
Is what it's called.
Okay.
And
I mean,
they'll
it's still-
execute
And
CEOs
how-
for
I
killing
guess, and
people.
the other
They don't.
They did
follow-up
once.
question is like
Like over milk.
how
It was like a milk CEO that they executed like
Maybe
6
there's-
years ago.
There's like stuff like that where
Like,
anyway.
like 20,000 people died or something crazy, so they just had to execute him. But
Yeah,
anyways.
I often hear some of those stories.
your question. I know, it's still,
but I mean,
it's
I
still
was
the
just gonna-
Communist Party of China,
yeah.
But like, I mean, how far is it? I guess ideologically from that
A degenerated worker state.
60s or Mao stuff that you were talking about. You know what I mean?
so I mean
Like
there are disagreements about this.
backstory, I guess, from then to now. not a small question.
I mean, it's very much. I mean, from my point of view, obviously there's some people who think that it's still socialist or still like anti-imperialist. I personally disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean,
But no, it's like when I lived there. This is before I became a leftist. I moved there and I lived there for 3 years and.
oh, I didn't. Know.
Oh, okay. I did. But like the biggest thing, like I went there with, the average like American understanding of communism is like Stalin and like the state tells you everything you're going to do. And then I move there and I get like a paycheck and I go to the store and I buy, the biggest thing that hit me is it's not that much different, at least day-to-day stuff from here. So least what it comes down to, like the daily like
Yeah.
economic experience of a Chinese person in the People's Republic of China is, other than like obvious differences in like a lot of people are paid way less, they don't have maybe access to as much material goods as we have, but how they relate to their economic life is identical pretty much to here.
Well, yeah, that reminds me of something. Like, that's one thing that people in the United States in particular really struggle with, I think, is they don't see the socialistic aspects that we do have in our society that they like, that they use.
Well, it's like,
you know what I mean? Or
do you know David Graeber? I mean, I'm sure he's like an anarchist.
He writes books.
Sociologist. I think he's a sociologist. He writes books. Yeah.
I feel like I read a Graeber book. I can't remember what it was right now.
That's fine. I mean,
Brock's got lots of the book smarts. That's why I want him on here.
So, and I'm sure other people bring this up too, but it sparks in my brain. A few books he brings up is about like how we, in our families and among our friends, often are communists. Like you don't tend to like feed your baby and then write them out a bill, or you don't like bring your friends over and charge them. It's
I've heard
not
some
a
horror stories of fucked up families where like they do that. I'm like, what the fuck? You know, like a father like giving the bill to their kid when they're 18. You know, that's happened before. Well, but I mean, that doesn't happen
in his book.
Often.
He brings that up. I think it's that the first 5,000 years is the book.
That's the one I listened to that one.
He brings up like I don't know if it's someone he knew or something he read about, but like someone literally went to their father and like kind of calculated.
You know what? That's literally the story that I'm telling right now. That's where I read that.
Or it's opposite.
Okay, yeah.
Where the son literally gives his father like, this is how much it spent. You spent like raising me. Here's the money, and like. Graeber points out that that's basically the son saying, I don't want to have a relationship with you anymore. Here's what I owe you. You're dead to me. And he goes into depth about how like his thesis is being like communist relations is how we like maintain relationships. And that's a big part of the book is like you bring people out for dinner and you pay for drinks. And the idea is that, okay, now at some point you're going to do the same for me. And it's a way of being like, maintaining like human relationships is that you have this, I do something for you, you do something for me. And I know that in the future, if I give you something today, it's not about necessarily getting an equal amount.
Yeah.
It's about if I'm in need, I will get the same like treatment. And it's building like this sort of community without like trades and without like a market. It's about like you have what you have and you share it and everyone benefits from that.
Well, yeah, and that's I think what's part of the most toxic thing about how people look at economics is when people get it in their head that their value is tied to money or tied to status, and everyone that wants anything from you is trying to get a part of that money or status. Like you get into this mindset that like. Is really just kind of just is just not natural, and it's like anti-communal, and you all of a sudden you're looking at people like they're enemies at trying to get at what you have, rather than looking at people like someone that can help you overcome your struggles. You're like, no, your struggles are your struggles, my struggles are mine, fuck off. It kind of creates it creates that competitive mentality that they think is like that's what they think human nature is. Oh
yeah, I just also wanted to break it down because we're all Marxists here, or anarcho-Marxists in our case. But it's like exchange value versus use value. Sounds like that son basically got zero use value out of parenting and basically paid dude off for the exchange value, the parent.
Right.
And then I was thinking about like, if the parent was a good capitalist, they would have been able to exploit the fuck out of that kid over, you know what I mean? And then the kid wouldn't know him anything if they were.
That's a good point.
Yeah. There's I think it was like in a college level psychology class I did take. There was a chapter on whoever wrote the book and it, along with what we're talking about now, they had this theory that the reason why there seem, I mean, this might not be true. I think there's a lot of other reasons why this is the case, but they were theorizing that the reason why divorce rates are so high is that people more and more are trying with their partners, trying to have an equal exchange of like labor in the relationship. So like if you do the dishes,
Yeah.
you're like, well, now someone has to do, my partner has to do an equal amount to exchange.
It's like
for
tailorized relationships, yo. You know about tailorization?
I don't,
What that
actually.
means? Oh, it's just like a tailor like work with Ford to. It's a like Marxist term to describe when the capitalists break down every single segment of your actions at work down into like minutia little details in the 30 seconds. Oh, it takes 30 seconds for you to make this turn to the left.
yeah.
It should take you 60 seconds for you to pull this
Micromanagement.
lever, and it sounds like that's tailorization of like relationships. Kind of, I mean. Just a little theory I thought of.
Well, I mean, I think that it's also that we're kind of reassessing what it means to be in a committed and respectful relationship, because it used to be that women couldn't assert as much power in a relationship in general. So I mean, guys are really struggling with that right now. Guys are really like a lot of guys out there, those Menonists or whatever, are really
MRAs
struggling with accepting that now women are taking charge and they're not taking the bullshit anymore. And they're I've gone through the transition to someone that used to be, I'd say I used to maybe be like an incel type person back in maybe
Is there
early
any
20s, but
cis het white male that wasn't? I mean, I definitely was.
well, yeah, that's what
You feel like you were macho at some point because
Yeah, at least a little
you
bit.
know what I mean.
you're born into like toxic masculine culture.
Your environment.
If you don't have supportive friends that are not also stuck in that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
guess
I mean,
not-
like
it's not
because
the same
they're
for
stuck
everybody.
in it too. All your guy friends growing up are also stuck in that culture. But yeah, it's something that each guy has to kind of deal with and overcome, I think. And a lot of guys aren't willing to take that step right now. I maybe drove this to a different topic here.
I mean, what's interesting, I don't know if you ever heard the book Sex Was Better Under Socialism.
No, that sounds great.
But
Okay,
I
I
bet it
haven't-
was.
About Russian Revolution, sexuality.
No. It's
because I heard good stuff about that.
It's about. I haven't read the book myself. I've listened to a few interviews with the author.
Yeah.
It's mostly focused on Soviet bloc, Warsaw Pact countries before and after the fall of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it just brings like the big difference is women having access to the ability to the economic ability basically to choose their partners. I think what it comes down to, but like how much happier they were with like an equal share of labor, because a lot of times women get stuck. I don't know if I should be the one talking about this, but a lot of times you get stuck between having to do in this modern society between having to do like the work of a man, but then also expected to do all the domestic labor at home still. And
Yeah, I think it's great that you're talking about that.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
understanding
but no-
that shit
yeah.
as a non,
Yeah. Well,
that's awesome.
it's
but
yeah.
but like just that, like not having the energy to be able to fully participate in a relationship, and then after before social or during like quote unquote socialism, whatever you want to call the Eastern Bloc countries were in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I guess not 90s, but the end of the Soviet Union.
91, I guess maybe.
But they had
yeah.
some sort of like social programs and things, and like everyone got paid relatively equitably, and then afterwards that all fell apart. And there's an interesting quote from that book was that Western Germans viewed like Eastern German women like very negatively because they said that they were like actually stood up for themselves, interestingly. And then like
Yeah.
That also is. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
But okay, so it's about the same region actually, and fucking non-male rights, I should say, not just women's rights. But fucking, it was about Belgium because we're gonna visit Belgium too, as you are. But we're doing it a little later in the summer. Fucking, and like they were like, I was this YouTube video was like, oh, the good things about Belgium. Oh, it's all these good social, equitable fucking things, and then unfortunately they have a really high divorce rate. And me and my wife were like, actually, that's really actually a sign of a progressive society. Right. I think. Yep. So.
Yeah. Well, they have good fries too.
Waffles.
Their
Chocolate?
waffles are great,
Chocolate?
but it's definitely the best steak and fries I've ever had.
Can I just call out Belgian and Dutch nationalism for being extremely imperialist and being extremely fucking like not acknowledging of how imperialist it is? So like, I'm like, Belgian chocolate. Oh, that's such a great. I grew up like, oh yeah, Belgian chocolate. That's
we do that a lot in the U.S.
It's bullshit.
We're like, we got Belgian waffles, we got French toast, we got French fries. Like we love to just fucking just put those titles on things and just call it a day.
Can I can I real quick, since we're talking about food and imperialism and revolutionary culture, like actually barbecue being an American sort of pastime is a little bit of a cultural appropriation that people aren't aware of, because barbecue was sort of like discovered, if you will. No, I shouldn't say that. It was invented in the Caribbean islands by Tainos. Smoking meats was a way to preserve shit. And because of the climate, like, it wasn't as, they didn't have like access to salt and shit like that. And when, imperialists came over to the islands, they discovered this technique, and a lot of African slaves who were very revolutionary and awesome folks who are referred to as Maroons, who escaped slavery and sort of created their own like underground societies in like the wilderness and shit like that, where the imperialists and the white folks couldn't get them. They like sort of engaged with Taino culture and barbecue and like developed it and changed it, right? And then like, so in a way, people don't know this, but because they think, a barbecue is an American thing. Oh, we have something to be proud of. But actually, it's very culturally appropriated. Not that I don't fucking love it.
Right. Well, I mean, like if you really go into a lot of, great advances in history, it's always culturally appropriated. You know what I mean? Like, every single time, like it's just, some smart guy from this time period picks up the stuff from a smart guy from a previous time period and then takes all the credit. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, well, at least since Europeans have been doing it.
And like George Washington
like,
Carver's the only one who escaped it.
Well, they learned stuff from like the ancient Egyptians. They picked up, math from like Pythagoreans and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, if they didn't have all that stuff, they wouldn't have been able to do the, genius stuff that they did. But like, we focus more on like Isaac Newton and like all the European dudes that did it, but we don't really focus as much on the people from other parts of the world that made that even possible.
Yeah,
well, there's even some theories that some of the like well-known early European mathematicians really just had translated copies of like people from the Arab worlds, like mathematicians, and like they basically just copied it, and they're like universally known as mathematicians now, and really they're probably plagiarizing.
Yeah. Well, Well, and I mean the Muslim world for a long time was like the top of medical and math and science for a good long time there, and we take a lot of notes from them when they were at their height.
Spread fucking literacy more than any society ever in culture. It reminds me of Cuba too, and how they spread fucking humanitarian doctors like more than any country in the world.
That was big. The Ebola outbreak in I forget where in Africa.
Congo. I just heard it on the radio on the way over.
And I think Cuba sent more doctors than anyone else.
There's two Congos. I don't want to be ignorant. Anyways.
Yeah. Well.
Wait. Could you elaborate quick?
There's like Democratic Republic of Congo and there's People's Republic of Congo.
Oh yeah,
Kinshasa. I might have got that wrong too. Kinshasa's like the city that's in both of them, kinda. On the border, and it's one of the hugest cities in the world, and people never talk about Kinshasa.
Ireland's got a thing going on like that. They got Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland, and then Belfast is like split down the middle.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what were you saying though? Because it was really interesting.
Oh no, just like Cuba sent more doctors than anyone to that crisis.
Yeah,
and it's not uncommon. Yeah. This little country with like that's blockaded by the United States. it's not, I guess not blockaded, but we don't trade with them, and we're their like closest large, we're a country right there, and they don't only send a lot of doctors, but they actually like give people scholarships to go there and study medicine. So they actually produce doctors that are probably practicing in the United States right now and all over the world.
That's right. And they focus on black folks, I think, right? Like black Americans. I think they have a special program for black Americans. Like I remember reading something about this where it might not be Americans, but it just be black folks where they have a doctor, like affirmative action program. And they also like train a lot of not African Americans, but black folks on this continent, because they're not necessarily American even. That whole word is kind of skewed. When folks say like, oh, American, and they refer to the U.S. of A., I think that's really American-centric, obviously, because what the fuck happened to Central America, Mexico, and Canada? There's a lot of countries you're missing there.
A lot of people in South America like don't accept you calling yourself an American. I mean, you are American,
right?
Quote, but like we should probably have a different word for people from this country.
Fucking A. I tried to drop U.S. of Americans. Like It's Going Down article that I did because I was like, oh yeah, this is so woke, and then like they edited it.
Just
say Americans.
Just call ourselves Yankees.
Yankees is good. Yeah. YANKQUIS. How in Spanish? I like the way it's spelled in Spanish. Anyways. So I was gonna to bring it back again about the Tennessee shit, but
Tennessee shit.
Tendency shit.
Tendency shit.
So like another thing that I learned out of in the International Socialist Organization, and I'm not here to fucking denigrate or be sectarian, but this is what I learned is that like Maoism and Stalinism.
Shit is obscene and I know that you've seen. Heard on the streets bringing back guillotine. Shit is obscene and I know that you've seen. Heard on the streets bringing back guillotine.
Bring it back.
Word on my moms. You'll pay for angels drawn song. Stirred us to arms. White man humiliation.
Don't humiliate.
Yeah. Murder black arms. White civil sect obsession. Parasite on innocent youth by scum. Fire the man and then some. Fetish shut down. Advancing Gestapo program. Whoa. Folks are no tongue. Yeah. Fleeing US made problems. Whoa. Workers are furloughed for the most racist of causes. Together we smash in La Migra and string up the bosses. Abolish the ICE and the DHS-CBP. Abuse of the tax and they torture all the babies. Jacqueline Maquin, Felipe Alonso Gomez. The names of the dead winners, this all gonna cease. Just 8 and 7 died at the hands of police. What's made to sever might be the answer we need. This race to sudden popular change from the streets. Shit is obscene and I know that you've seen. Heard on the streets bringing back guillotine. Shit is obscene and I know that you've seen. Heard on the streets bringing back guillotine. Shit is obscene and I know that you've seen. Heard on the streets bringing back guillotine. Shit is obscene and I know that you've seen. Heard on the streets bringing back guillotine.
But I did a fucking podcast a few weeks ago with IWW in West Virginia, and those folks are both Stalinists, and they seem like some really bang up characters that I really fucking liked. And I know other Stalinists in the Workers' World Party that I've organized with on like black liberation work, shit that not all other tendencies were doing. So like I have a lot of respect for Stalinists now too. So I don't know, I'm just just getting over the sectarian shit.
Well, I guess like what did like Stalinists say about Stalin? I guess
I don't know. I tend to try to avoid it, but
yeah, it's probably an awkward topic, right? Like,
but I don't know. Yes and no.
I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on how you use those terms, words. Again,
Yeah. So people who are quote unquote Stalinists usually refer to themselves as Marxist-Leninists.
Right.
Yeah, and Trotskyist.
Because generally you don't refer to yourself as the worst of them. You know what I mean?
A PR thing.
Like Like even people that are on people on the alt-right try to distance themselves from Hitler directly or Nazis directly when they're trying to deflect from their bullshit ideology. Yeah. Well, yeah, the ones that lead somewhat normal lives and aren't hardcore into it yet. You know what I mean? They don't know yet that they're projecting that shit, but they are.
But they like Trotskyism versus Marxist-Leninism or Stalinism. If you look into it, their main disagreements are whether they like Trotsky or Stalin more.
I think a fourth fucking international comes up a lot. I would argue probably. You know about this?
Well, fourth versus the third international.
Yeah, the fourth international was when two Trotskyisms emerged. I might be wrong about that,
Well,
but then
like,
also I
wasn't-
think that the in addition to the Fourth International, another thing is the fucking degenerated worker state.
Yeah.
Was the Russian Revolution after Lenin died a socialist
Yeah.
country or not? That's another thing, a big question that they differ on.
But they usually aren't critical of like the Soviet Union before. Like Trotskyists aren't usually critical of the Soviet Union before Lenin died, and like
Right.
the Soviet Union before, like while Lenin was alive, was very much the system that led to Stalin coming to power. So if you're against Stalin but you support that specifically that Soviet Union before Lenin died, you're basically supporting the system that allowed the thing you hate to come to power. You need to at least be critical of that and understand why Stalin was able to get control of was able to build support among, as Stalin called, like the middle cadres, the middle level people in the
Trust me, there's
country.
plenty of theoretical work that happens in ISO on this. I've done
I was about to say, I was about to
many
speak
a
up on it
discussion
too.
group on this topic.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure. Yeah, go ahead, Brad. Because I've done this for years.
I've not encountered this. So this is
Yes,
interesting.
absolutely.
Well. So one of the big things that we, I guess,
Trotsky
we
theory.
generally talk about and agree on in the ISO, I guess, is the fact that the revolution didn't necessarily happen at the right time. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't the proper timing for the revolution to happen because the
uneven development.
yes,
Yeah.
the development, yeah,
Combined and uneven development.
exactly.
Is-
Well,
That's what, yeah.
The plan.
that's not the only one.
The hope
I got
was that the rest of Europe was going to revolt almost at the same
Yep, the
time. and it
failure
almost
of the
did.
Yeah.
of the KPD. Yep.
Yeah, and I think that there's people
Germany.
also that will stress the specific members and people that were skeptical of the revolution, and they'll bring them up. It's
The peasant question was huge.
Yeah.
The land reform. So that's
Uh-huh.
and it's still a huge to this day, that question is very huge amongst
Yeah.
different tendencies. There's a lot of disagreements on it,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, that was a huge part of the reasoning of Trotsky theory that I've learned anyways, behind why it degenerated and there was nothing they could do about it, because there was elements inside the Russian Revolution that were sort of bureaucratic as fuck from the get-go, even though Lenin tried to struggle against them and try to implement these different things as far as policies with agricultural reform. But these folks sort of gave the peasants too much power. It's sort of that was the problem.
Well, yeah, the
the
they
peasants
kind of thrust the
didn't have
revolution
the-
upon them too quickly,
And they didn't have the
without
proletarian
teaching them why they needed it.
Exactly. And they
Yeah.
didn't have the proletarian consciousness that sort of, at least the folks that taught me Trotskyitism, feel that is central to Leninist theory. Not all Leninists think that, right?
But you know what's interesting though, on maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, is that Trotsky, at least when in the Third International, was one of the voices that was most pro revolution in countries that weren't developed yet.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Trotsky really pushed for a revolution in China, while as the more what's considered Stalinists at that area or time period or whatever you want to call were saying that no, they're not ready yet. And that's a lot of when you look into the history of the Third International, they opposed the Cuban Revolution because they weren't industrialized yet. They opposed the
Right.
Chinese Revolution; they weren't industrialized. They opposed the Vietnamese Revolution, et cetera, et cetera.
Can you tell me a little more? Who was the Third International? What year that happened? Do you know?
Third International was basically, I think it was formed in 17 or 1819. I forget when, 1918, 1919. It was basically
1900s.
Soviet Union's. So you got the First International, Second International, obviously, and the Third
First International was just Marx, back in the 1870s
Yeah, it was-
and shit, or 60s, I think. Working men's.
Just Marx chilling out there.
the
Working Men's something,
Men's International or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
it was
yeah.
it was like a union of unions
Yeah.
across mostly in Europe, but some.
And there were some
influence in
anarchists
North
involved. Even
American.
Bakunin was in there originally,
Yeah.
and all that. Yeah,
Yeah, and then there was a split, but
Yep.
and then there's a Second International, which is a whole topic unto itself.
All right. Do you-
That
yeah.
that fell apart at the start of World War I because all these socialist parties backed their nations in the war.
Right.
They gave up internationalism.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing. Is the Bolsheviks and maybe the Mensheviks too. I don't quite remember right now. Stayed international, and they dropped out of the Second International too because they were saying no, we shouldn't be supporting an imperialist war between working people shouldn't be going to die in a war for their bosses, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the third.
And then the Third International was basically set up after the Soviet Union was formed, in
1919.
I don't know exactly when the
1917
Third International-
October and November revolutions, I think, are the two. And November was the big deal. And of course, yeah.
I don't know when they
Yeah.
officially set up the Third International, but a little after the October Revolution, they set up the Third International to organize like worldwide with the world. They basically they all the communist parties of said country were generally a part of the Third International.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And then what were we talking about Third International for? But the question of the peasant.
The peasant, I guess. Generally, the Third International, like the quote unquote like Stalinist International.
Right.
So that's where the Stalinist stuff starts.
Yeah, because Stalin was in power at that point.
Well, I mean, at least
Was he in power or was he just in the party?
Well, he was in the party since fucking pre-1905.
Well, I was gonna say,
he was
but-
like
but
he was a bank robber. He was a badass dude.
he would rob banks for the
he was an
revolution.
expert bank robber. That was his fucking specialty, bro.
Yeah.
Appropriation. That's badass.
He
And
literally
he's from
robbed-
the Georgia Caucasus
He
Mountains and
would
shit.
rob banks to fund the party.
Wow,
Yep.
I never
There's
heard
this
that
rapper that's
particular
named
part.
Young Stalin, yo.
Young
Because
Stalin.
he's giving homage to the bank robbing Stalin and shit. It's funny. And that dude's good too. He's a good rapper.
That's funny.
Holler to Young Stalin.
No,
Yeah.
but like the Third International, which is basically like you can view it as like the Soviet Union's international like politics, because they kind of were telling the communist parties throughout the world kind of what they should be doing, and like I'm saying like
Oh yeah, this is when the black belt theory came too, right? With the black liberation politics in the United States, and Trotsky and Stalin had split on this question. Anyways,
actually-
all this theory's coming like flooding back into my head.
you'd have to talk about that. I
Right.
don't know anything about that.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
just
let's just think.
in general,
Yeah.
like the Third International did not support revolution. Like that's a big thing. Is like the communist. Like I always talk about like the Chinese Revolution and then the Cuban Revolution. Kind of famously, like the Communist Party of China like broke with the Soviet Union because basically the Soviet Union and the Third International were backing the Kuomintang, the Nationalist Party. And then in Cuba, the Third International aligned Communist Party was the last to join the revolution out of the left-wing parties in Cuba. But even in like the United States, like we were on the verge, arguably, of socialist revolution in the Great Depression. And the Third International like was telling the American Communist Party, the United States Communist Party, like just get into like trade unions and build trade unionism and get like they were saying like not building like that militant revolutionary spirit.
Trade
they
union
were-
shit was new at this point. AFL-CIO was only a few years old, right?
And then
Yep.
but like hindsight's 2020, but you kind of see how that happens as soon as the war is over and the depression is over, just completely the unions completely purged all left-wing people from the unions in the mid to late 40s. Like everyone was gone from this AFL-CIO that was a communist or an anarchist or a socialist of any stripe. And so like it didn't, there might have been an opportunity to turn this, United States to overthrow it. And this is true across the world. And it wasn't like pushed. Like who knows? Alternate history is hard to guess what really would have happened. But they definitely were putting the brakes on it. And there's a big thing when you like look into it too, like where the Soviet Union, especially when like fascism started to rise, like they really thought that like if the Soviet Union wasn't too aggressive and the communist parties across the world weren't too aggressive and too threatening, that of course like the Western democracies would help fight fascism. And obviously like United States and Britain and France were happy to let like Mussolini and Franco and Hitler like just do whatever they wanted until finally like they went a little bit too far. Like they were willing to let Hitler be. Like the Holocaust was fine. They knew what was going on. If Hitler would have invaded the Soviet Union instead of Poland, I think the UK and France wouldn't have done anything. The only reason they got involved is that there was a treaty. So like you have the Third International kind of playing this like, and I'm sure someone could explain more ideologically why they did this, but this game of like, we're not going to be too aggressive. We're going to play within the rules of like, or at least the Third International aligned parties will play within like the walls of like liberal democracy. Like they'll get people elected to office and they'll do trade unions, but they're not going to actively advocate for like full revolution, socialist revolution.
That's where like the full social fascism theory bullshit came from too. I think from the
Third International.
Yeah,
They
well, it
like,
sounds like exactly what you're talking.
Well,
like their
it's,
excuse, their theoretical excuse for doing that.
if I might be wrong,
Social
but
fascism.
like, well, there was like,
Yeah.
they basically blamed. They said like Trotsky was like aligned with Hitler before the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which was like the non-aggression pact between the Soviet Union and Germany.
Okay.
But like, yeah, they were like within like the Soviet Union after Trotsky got what's the word I'm looking for? Exiled.
Extradited.
Yeah.
We got kicked out of the country.
Serbia. No, that's extra. No, that's neither. It's exiled. Like it's exiled.
Exiled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah, that's right. He got legit exiled.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there was social fascists, I believe, were like what they labeled quote unquote Trotskyists. They were like these parties that are not aligned with the Third International are Trotskyists. Like even like I know famously like in Spain during the Civil War, there's like the POUM and some other Marxist organizations that weren't aligned with Trotskyism. They were just like Marxist revolutionary parties that got labeled as Trotskyists and therefore were like aligned with fascists, and like that was a way to discredit them.
Yeah, and I thought also that it was like a theoretical what's it called, rationalization for like we'll just let the fascists get in power and then what happens after will be better or something like that. I don't remember the specifics on the social fascist theory that was coming out of Russia, but how weak it was during like I thought it was the Spanish Revolution, right? Because Russia was involved in all that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring it back again to the the agrarian question in the Komintag. You mentioned the Komintag. I want to ask you about, because that was like you said that Soviet Union was aligned with the Komintag. That was post Lenin, right? Because I think that was another thing I learned about why the Russian Revolution failed was they were looking to Germany, they were looking to the Chinese Revolution, and like I remember learning in the ISO that like fucking Mao was like this horrible person, and he slaughtered workers. Like their theories were very flawed, and which meant that they were more pro peasant than they were workers, and that they were going around like killing workers and workers movements, and that that was like a pivotal another reason that they give for the Leninist Russian Revolution failing and turning into Stalinism.
Well, I mean, I would have to read that to know what they're talking about. I mean, at least during like in like the 20s and the 30s when the Chinese Communist Party like started to gain sway, like you have to remember that like something like 85% of the Chinese population was peasants. So like if you're gonna have a revolution at all, it's gonna have to be a peasant revolution.
Yeah.
And especially like during there was in the I think 1926. So before I gotta lead up to this. Before that, the Third International was working. They basically organized this alliance between the Nationalist Party and the Communist Party. Because the Nationalists at this time, like China, was mostly run by like feudal landlords that had armies.
Yeah.
And that were like bought and paid for a lot of times by like imperialist powers, like United States or England.
Kulaks,
like
they were called in Russia, I believe.
Well, no, these are like literal like.
It's different.
Yeah, this is different. This is like the whole country is being ruled by these like separate little landlords.
Okay.
Who have armies and they're fighting and all this. Well, not kulaks, because I feel like kulaks were just landed peasants, and these are like legit, like just own like an area, like literally, like if you think of like a little like duke or like.
That's exactly what I was taught kulaks were. They were not just the peasants, but they were the peasants that also had control over other peasants. Oh shit. Okay, I don't know what that was. It was not my house.
So when I'm saying, well, I guess there were those two. So there's a really good book called Fanshan, if you attend borrow it. That's like this American guy who was over in China, and he was like working in a tractor factory or something for like the United States, were like to develop China or whatever, and then that got when the communists took over, or when basically after World War II was over, the communists started overrunning overrunning the nationalist controlled areas for a lot of interesting reasons.
Yeah.
But so this guy, American guy, starts teaching English. Like he's there and he just starts teaching English. But during the agricultural reforms, he asks the university and he gets the approval to go out into the countryside and spend time out there. And he writes this book based on like the stories he
What is it
heard
called
and
again?
seeing it. Fanshen, Fanshen.
Cool.
It's a good documentary little book. What was I saying? But so you got from that book, it explains kind of like most peasants like couldn't afford any land. They had to rent all of it, and it was very brutal. There were some who were able to own the land that they actually worked, and then there are people obviously like, but like when I'm talking about like these sort of like landlords or warlords.
Oh, so they're not just they're war associated
Yeah,
too.
they're like
That's
like
different than kulaks.
yeah, they own like tons of land. They
Okay.
like maybe own like a province.
Yeah, kulaks weren't nothing to do with war necessarily.
No. So like, so there's like that. Like a kulak would be like I was saying, like a landlord peasant who owns like
Yeah,
their
exactly.
land and the land around them,
Yeah,
and
but
they
they
rent
don't-
it out.
Yeah, but they don't really have any like capital besides, or like any
Yeah,
way to turn
they
it into
own-
capital.
They own a little bit. Like there's a big thing in Fanshen, which I know happened in Russia too, where like these what would be called kulaks in what you're talking about,
Yeah.
but like these sort of landlord peasants,
Yeah.
is that they like to like hoard grain, you know what I mean, for like
Yeah.
speculation in the markets and
Oh,
stuff
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
Yeah.
The whole- Anyway,
Do
the
you mind
landlords.
if I have my book? Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. Thanks.
Anyway,
Brad.
so like, but this is a bit of a tangent. What I was trying to say is that most of the country was
Peasants.
most of the country was peasants, but most of the
85%.
country was not ruled by the government. So there's like the saying that like the revolution in 1911 that overthrows the empire, but even before then, the Empire of China really didn't have any. I don't know if that matters. Control.
I don't think.
Didn't really have any like control over the country of like the land that it's called China. There's all these warlords, and so the Nationalist Party asked the Soviet Union for help because the Western powers wouldn't help them. They needed like help with like modernizing their military to conquer, like get rid of these warlords that ruled most of China.
Okay.
And basically like United States, France, Germany, UK like didn't want to help them because they for the most part like had control of like one or two or a few warlords, and they were getting benefits from that. They were like getting access to resources or whatever was in that territory. And so they refused to help the Nationalist Party. The Soviet Union agreed to, but the Nationalist Party had to allow communists to join the party. And so you had this organization where you had the Nationalist Party and you have the Chinese Communist Party like as a faction within it.
Oh wow.
And so
What year is this? Do you know?
this is like the early 20s, 20 to 25. 1922 to 25. And so the Soviet Union builds a military academy, gives them like military like weapons and stuff like that to arm them. They're kind of like the Soviet Union wants to form like an ally in Asia because they're pretty much alone at this point. 1925, I think the year is this sort of army that consists of the Nationalist Party and the Communists and other people. Like they form an army. They do this thing called the Northern Expedition, where they go north from like what's like Guangzhou or Canton around there, which is like the south of China, and they move north and they sweep through and they get rid of all these warlords, and they like it's sort of like it's like a liberal revolution with communists in it.
So that was what they're referring to as slaughtering workers.
I don't know. I don't
Maybe.
know what the ISO is referring to as slaughtering workers. But anyway, I guess I'll try to speed this up. So they sweep through and they get to Shanghai, and this is a big thing. And before this Northern Expeditionary Army gets to Shanghai, Shanghai has already been liberated by the workers there, and they form a thing called the Shanghai Commune. And so it's this like worker run like kind of like a Soviet during the Chinese or the Russian Revolution.
Yeah.
But the nationalists show up in Shanghai, and they when they get to Shanghai, they expel the communists, and they put down the Shanghai Commune and a lot like hundreds or thousands of like pro union and communist and socialist workers are executed, and a lot of communists in the Nationalist Party are killed. A few escape, and they escape to the countryside, and that's when Mao wasn't the ruler of the party or the chairman of the party at this point, but he was out in the countryside organizing peasants against the landlord at this time. And so in the cities, like the communist movement and the labor movement even, and the pro-democratic movement is like wiped out. I think like over 100,000 Chinese people are executed in 1926 by the nationalists. And that's when the party really shifts from more traditional. I mean, before then they were organizing in the countryside peasants, but the Communist Party of China really focused on the cities and organizing workers. And after that, like they pretty much got shut out of cities except for really underground stuff, because it was basically like if you got caught with communist like literature, you could be executed on the spot in China at that point. And so that's when you really have the rural side of the Chinese Revolution take over, because any sort of workers organizations are like barely surviving if they're not completely wiped out. And the surviving communist leaders go to the city and start organizing the city. And that's where you get like these like huge areas of like organized peasants who are, you know, joining the Red Army and stuff like that. And you can go into that, but that's really where like, I don't know what they're talking about. They might be talking about, you know, there's a lot of stuff about the Great Leap Forward and
I've heard that phrase.
Okay. I didn't read the literature. I just heard it secondhand.
Okay.
So.
I mean, I don't know. Like Trotskyist, I read a Trotskyist version of the Chinese Revolution, and they were very, like, they were anti-Mao, obviously. I used to get shit in the Socialist Alternative because, like, Maoists just want to go to the hills and with guns and, like...
That's what I was going to bring up, too. Yeah. The anti-Mao rhetoric I've learned from the ISO. And that's not to say the ISO is wrong. I think they got cogent theories and fucking are right to, like, critique shit or whatever. But after I left there, I think that it's a little bit... it was, like, this impression where you're, like... You don't want to mess with a Maoist, but then I've organized with Barack a lot, and fucking Barack is the bomb, comrades. I'm like, fuck that. Like, I'm open to all that shit.
Also, from what you said, it sounds like the Mao wasn't the one that was killing the workers in the cities.
Right. Yeah, there's obviously more, analysis that has happened, and I also want to bring out like the Cuba, like. I've heard Trotskyites denounce like Cuban revolutionaries as being too focused on peasantry, and sort of that's like the Maoist thing too. It's like guerrilla warfare oriented. Well, and that's sort of like really one-sided analysis of like a whole entire.
I've gotten the guerrilla warfare thing. I think that's really context dependent. Like, if you're being executed, like you have to go into a guerrilla war. Like, what are you gonna do? Just let yourself get killed?
Yeah.
Like
anytime you're going. I don't know. You're going to someone else's soil and then basically saying, join us or die. You're going to force them to do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
To live.
Right.
Ho Chi Minh style.
So like the idea that Maoists in the United States, for instance, are arguing that we need to all get guns and like hide out in like cornfields and like kill people is like ridiculous.
Yes.
I mean, there might be some of them, but I mean, there are some pretty whack.
There's probably some Trotsky folks like that too, because there's some wild Trotsky tendencies too.
Well, what was the other thing you said I wanted to speak on?
Oh, I'm sorry, like the guerrilla warfare.
No, the other part.
That they reduce it to Barack is a great comrade, so I'm open to everything.
Yes, just say that.
Yeah, Barack is the bomb.
Yeah.
And it's like the intellectuals, like every tendency that I've been exposed to, there's like great intellectuals that have super bomb cogent theories that are very helpful for overall analysis. So like I'm just so over sectarianism.
Yeah, I mean, like there's always somebody, like we're all kind of hopefully trying to do the same thing. We're trying to get the same space, same like world at some point that hopefully there's at least some decent like ideas, or no one would believe it, I would hope.
Fuck.
So there's good stuff I've written from anyone, like and I don't know that I'm like What am I trying to say?
Well, so can I chime in? So my frame of reference before all of the leftist stuff that I now love, I was in, the Christian kind of world, going to different churches, playing shows, and seeing all the different sects of Christianity and all the different perspectives.
Yeah, it's like the same shit, right?
On grace and redemption. Well, no. I was actually going to say, like, it's even though these Lutheran, Southern Baptists, different people, all have are worshiping the same God and supposedly talking about the same shit. Like, if you ask like two different people, even within a church, the same church, about like specific things, you'll get two different answers about some of those things. You know what I mean? Like everybody, goes into it with like to the faith to get what they need out of it, them, personally. You know what I mean? And I think that's one thing, that's a perspective that I have that I'm able to kind of talk about in reference to the left, because I feel like a lot of times people on the left are doing that same kind of thing. They're going into these organizations for to get something out of it, because they want that natural need for community and find your place in your community. But like we don't have on the left, we don't have churches. We don't have like we have community spaces sometimes, like libraries, public libraries. We can organize that when we want to rent a room or something. But like we don't have these big open buildings that's only purpose is to organize and talk about like leftist things. So like so I've always thought that like that's kind of helped me kind of remember like they're just sometimes people are just arguing over semantics, and they're just kind of, missing the bigger picture about certain things. But, generally they're on the same team.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how many folks. I mean, I have anarcho-communists and anarchist/communist, not anarcho-communist, because that's an even more defined tendency than anarchism or communism is. And because like I just not into sectarianism, and not to criticize yourself for calling yourself an anarcho-Maoist or anything like that, but yeah, I want to label myself as broadly as I can, so I'm like everything as much as I can anyways.
I'm a human.
But, yeah, but look, all lefty, like anti-capitalist for sure, like like let's make that, but fucking you don't know how many questions I get. I told you this the other day, but we weren't podcasting, so now we get it on record. But anyways, how many questions I get about, hey, how can you be an anarchist and a communist at the same time, like on Twitter and on Instagram? And then like, it's telling too, because like the right wingers who are like they think they're like crushing me, which they're not, because this is like literally like one of the oldest tendencies out there in history. They'll do it publicly, but then the lefties who are just curious, they'll DM me, which is legit, and I'll tend to talk to them. But the righties, I'll tend to like, you're stupid, bye, and then block them. I don't know, because I don't. It's go ahead.
I was just like, I don't know. I'm somewhat joking, calling myself an anarcho-Maoist. It's like true though. Because
cutting through that shit, sectarianism,
like,
right?
and I'm not the only one. Like, I wouldn't even.
Someone that was a Buddhist Christian,
Sure, yeah.
Well,
the Pope condones Buddhism. The Pope condones Buddhism, or John Paul did. I don't know.
Buddhism doesn't, assume much, specific spirituality stuff.
Right, like that's how like Zen Buddhism kind of developed in China. Is like
it's more about
you have these like folk gods, and they just fold into like the Buddhist religion, like because it's. Now I'm on it. Off what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Yeah, that's enough. We could talk.
Well, we're gonna talk. Yeah, religion's a whole different conversation. The way that the East looks at it versus the West, and all that.
Yeah, I've been lately getting into the Christian socialist stuff, which is interesting.
Well, yeah, because like I mean, okay, I don't want to get too into it, but I mean, Jesus was a socialist, right? Like he was hanging out with homeless people and prostitutes and stuff, and he was fighting for the little guy all the time, and like he was pissed off that the church was trying to make money off of religion and shit. Like, you know,
and he was pissed off that his people were being oppressed by a foreign imperialist power.
Yes, exactly. So I mean, like Jesus, like I weirdly enough, like I still see like my socialism and leftist stuff still kind of ties back to my like kind of like, you know, following of his ideologies in a weird way, you know? Like I wouldn't call myself a Christian anymore, but I mean, like, he was one of my first revolutionaries that I looked up to, you know what I mean? Whether or not you believe he exists or not, you know what I mean? He was a very
sectarian revolutionary.
yeah.
Well, what were you just gonna say about what Anarcho-Maoism?
Well,
the moniker?
Yeah. What was I going to say?
You're half joking by using the moniker Anarcho-Maoist.
So, like, I was into Maoism, like, or MLM, Marxist-Leninism, Maoism first. Not first, I should say. I developed into that. And then, you know, a lot of the stuff that, at least what I was reading, really made me want to do was, like, I think I was saying earlier, I was like, serve the people stuff, like getting involved in the community, in your workplace, and solving issues there, and like, providing, you know, help and ways to get, you know, like we've done that, like, free food program.
Yeah.
But when you are actually in, like, a leftist space in the United States, you know, you go to, like, I was, like, when I was in Socialist Alternative, I was told I was being liberal for suggesting we do stuff like that.
Right.
And I think ISO is similar, and Workers' World Party, and all those sort of Marxist-Leninists and Trotskyist parties kind of have that view on that sort of thing, and that might be, I think that's changing a bit. But the people who were leftists in town who were down with that were always anarchists. So that's kind of how I started, like, even though I consider myself a Maoist, and maybe I'm not anymore, or maybe I am, that I don't know for sure. But when I actually started doing real life organizing, it was always the anarchists who were down with what I wanted to do, and not anyone else, because that wasn't building their party or whatever they were. Whatever it was that they thought was important wasn't what I was interested in.
Yeah, that reminds me of the mutual aid theories, because that. Is that prevalent in Maoism at all? And also fucking recreating the commons. So like rebuilding the commons. I've heard Marxists talk about this too.
Yeah.
So this is one thing that I think that, you know, like cutting through sectarianism and that we need to like bring up is I heard Silvia Federici talk about this. I think I talked about this both with y'all, but we weren't podcasting before. But Silvia Federici talks about like rebuilding the commons, because commons is sort of like a Marxist theory, right? Based on superstructure shit, and like base fucking, you know, and like the usurpation, like how capitalism relies on the brutal and violent overtaking of capital in the form of land, and so you look at the British capitalists, when the capitalists took power in Britain 1700s, and how brutally they like fucking like killed peasants because they needed that land for the system to work. And so fucking because of the land is part of like the underlying capital that is behind the system. If we are able to like communalize the lands and common spaces more, we're actually fighting against capitalism. And so this is like a way Silvia Federici, like, kind of, I think it's like this great theory that bridges anarchist thought and also fucking Marxist thought too. And I really like that.
I mean, that should be the basis of anyone who calls himself a socialist, anarchist, or communist, because part of, like...
Keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, 6 minutes, yeah.
That's fine.
We'll wrap it up after this one.
But, right, you're saying, like, the capitalists took away the commons, and the commons were, like, under feudalism, at least in Europe, and probably in similar variants throughout the world, is, like, the local community, the village, like, you didn't have like peasants who owned land before capitalism. You had the whole village was owned technically by a feudal landlord, like a duke or whatever rank they were. But the villagers in the village, the peasants, worked the land together. They gave a bit to the church. They gave a bit to the landlord as in taxes and tithes. But like everyone worked together on the same land. No one owned like an acre here and an acre there. So rebuilding that idea that we all own this stuff around us and we all work it together for our own, like, you know, mutual benefit is an important part of like what socialism is. about like we don't have property anymore. Like,
Yeah. That's like the most valuable thing in today's society is property. Still, you know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
And so-
what, if you own the land, you know, you control a lot.
So yeah, you are like really fucking knowledgeable on theory. Sorry to tell you, Brock. So I want to have you on again. This is why I wanted to have you on.
Yeah.
And like
definitely,
history,
yeah.
dude, it's like so.
Yeah.
It's really good talk and fucking. But we got to wrap this up, unfortunately, because
Yeah.
folks got to get going. So
I gotta
It's
pee.
gotta
so
work.
bad.
you could have stopped though. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah. So like plugs.
Plugs. Yeah. Let's do the
Plugs.
plugs.
Should I go first? Fuck. What do I got? I got General Defense Committee meeting at. So 10 plus 14 is 24. So that's the 324. That's March 24th. And that's going to be a Sunday,
Yeah.
according to my math.
Yeah, so
Hopefully that
that's
works
Sunday.
out. And then,
Okay.
so that's 4:30 p.m. at Mother Fool's Cafe. We're having a General Defense Committee meeting, and it's really structured a lot like ISO meetings now. We do organizing, and we do a lot of political talk now. We do like a reading, and we talk politics.
I'm about to start showing up.
So
again.
yeah, like and
Nice.
ISO folks who
Nice.
are missing that and that maybe don't want to go to their meetings are definitely allowed. Welcome there. So maybe we'll see some folks there. How about you, Brad?
Yeah. So before I get to my plugs, I just want to give I guess a request out. I'm trying to put together a political roundtable podcast with local activists from different groups. And so far I've reached out to a couple of the socialist organizations I know about, but I want to get as many people as possible involved. But having maybe me and 3 or 4 guests on twice a month, just talking about local activism and what's going on in national politics. So if you have any, if you think that that's something that you're interested in, hit me up on Twitter, Revolover Audio, and I'm on SoundCloud as well. And if you like this and any of my other stuff, if you want to check out my other stuff, I have the Hero Worship podcast, which is me interviewing my family and talking about what inspires me about them. And then I have my Rolling Stone podcast, which is a less wholesome podcast about me and my roommate just kind of making dicks of ourselves. But check both of those out and let me know what you think. That's Hero Worship and Rolling Stoned. We are on Twitter and SoundCloud. So, and look us up on whatever podcasting platform you normally use.
You got plugs?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm involved with the Socialist Rifle Association, in the IWW and the GDC, but I mean, the Socialist Rifle Association's been growing real quick, and if you're interested in learning how to safely handle firearms and do, a big push is disaster relief in the org, so consider joining. It's only $25 a year, which is cheap for membership fees.
Is there an email or website? Yes.
There
I'll
is
end it.
shit. There is sure. There's just Google search Socialist Rifle Association, you'll find it.
Bet. All right, y'all. We're out. Thanks for joining us.